Welcome back. It is no secret that hate crimes against Asians in Canada are up dramatically since 2019. Here are some numbers. Over 700% in Vancouver, over 600% in Ottawa, just to name a few cities. Let's talk about what's happening. Joining me with more, Amy Go of the Chinese-Canadian Council for Social Justice, Dr. Gina Wong, psychologist and professor at Athabasca University, and Andrew Chung, who is a filmmaker here in Toronto. Good morning to you all.
Morning.
We thought this was a very important discussion and one that I definitely wanted to have here. And one of the reasons why is because I've had a difficulty expressing myself in this conversation, being able to speak up and what to say. So I want to begin with you, Dr. Wong, because there is a reason. When you talk about the Asian heritage, there's almost a suppression of emotion. It feels strange to be very outright and be able to have your voice heard. Can you explain some of that psychology behind that?
Well, there's a Cantonese term, it's called yun, and it's that idea of having to suppress and hold in those feelings of being hurt or offended. And when you think of some of the stereotypes around Chinese individuals, it's that we're polite, we're submissive, we're subservient. So that sense of holding it in has kind of a double whammy for us.
It really does. And here's the thing, doing this as a job, you do the stories and you report on them, but to be able to speak outwardly about your reaction, how you're feeling, it feels like a whole other level. And this is where I want to bring in Amy here. Amy, you, of course, have been following what's been happening across Canada. We see some of these stats. It's not just in the U.S. Of course, we were following the mass shootings in Atlanta, and it is so very troubling. And I think very, very much now we need to have this conversation. But this is a conversation that you've been having for some time, Amy.
Exactly. We actually have seen a definitely rise of anti-Asian racism across the country. Our partner organization has received over 1,000 reports on their websites up to February of this year. And it's, less than a year. And absolutely, these are attacks online, in person, from, shunning to name calling to physical assault, spitting, and all that is very common. So definitely this hate crimes, these kind of hate crimes are not unique to the US. It's very rampant in Canada, and definitely something that we all should be paying attention and should actually hold ourselves responsible for.
Andrew, I want to bring you into this conversation here. You live in Toronto, a very diverse city, multicultural city, but sadly you've experienced a number of microaggressions, you and your family.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's why it's even hard to report. We've never reported it, right? Like, I live in a predominantly white neighborhood in Leslieville, and a couple of experiences just when the pandemic began. Like, me and my wife were just walking down the streets and on the sidewalk, and we were scolded for not keeping 6 feet away, despite the fact that we had a very narrow sidewalk. They expected us to be on the road. And we just felt very cast aside, as if we were the ones that needed to be on the road to stay away from everybody else and not the reverse. And there was like a cyclist that was passing at the same time that chimed in and piled onto us and said, yeah, you should be on the road. So we felt like we didn't belong in our own neighborhood. And we also had experiences in our own building where it was a predominantly white building, and we were questioned about whether we belonged in the building because we were one of the only Asian residents in the building. So they didn't believe that we actually lived there. So it was microaggressions like that we experienced personally. And on the professional side, I experience it all the time as well. Like, the casting directors have told me that Asian actors don't emote. I was told that trying to be repped as a director for a production company, I was told that they already had a Chinese director, so they didn't need another one, or that's what they were insinuating, right? That once you have one, that's good enough, right? So I do it in a lot of the stories that I tell today. Like, my film White Elephant that's playing at the Canadian Film Festival is about that. It's about feeling like we don't belong in the neighborhood that we actually grew up in and were born in. Right?
These are so very important conversations. I want to bring in Dr. Wong to this one again, because I put this online. A lot of people are saying, stop Asian hate. You'll see that hashtag floating around, and a lot of these conversations are now coming to surface. And I did have some reaction where some people saying, well, we don't hate Asians. I don't know what you're talking about. And then sort of bringing you to a point where you feel like you need to suppress these feelings again. And then you step back and say, listen, how do I identify myself? Am I a person of color? And then I've read a number of different articles about how you identify yourself as an Asian person. Are you someone who is a marginalized community? And then you start questioning yourself. And I don't know if I'm alone in this thinking, Dr. Wong, but how do you interpret all of this?
I think any individuals of any Asian descent can be part of this sense of racism and hate. I have children who are half Asian, and so they're fully a person of color and have every right to feel how they feel. And it's a kind of a different space that they sit in because they can fit within another racial profile and then have another one. So it's almost like two senses of not belonging. So that's also an issue I don't think that many people are talking about. So Asians in the sense of, full race, but there's also individuals of any Asian descent that will feel this.
Amy, I want to go to you here because there might be a lot of people watching and saying, okay, finally realizing that there are some issues here and they want to help. They want to be an ally. What can they do?
Definitely, each and every one of us, first of all, should reflect on our own privilege and see how we can exercise the privilege and power, and reflect on our own assumptions and biases and stereotypes against Asians as well as other racialized groups. And we are calling all our allies because I think it's important to have political leadership. And so we are calling our political leaderships in the parliament to have a motion to denounce anti-Asian racism and to take concrete action. So we would like all Canadians to support this, pick up the phone, call your MP and urge them to take this issue seriously and have that motion passed unanimously in our parliament.
Indeed, and these conversations start with our young ones as well. And that's a topic we don't have time to get to, but the bullying and the sentiment is starting in the schoolyard. So let's have these conversations now with the little ones. Appreciate your time. Amy, Dr. Wong, and Andrew, thank you so much for joining today.
Thanks for having us.
All right, time right now is 8:47. We're going to take a quick break here on Breakfast Television. We'll see you after this.